Hey, appreciate that, Robin. So, guys, first of all, I just want to start by thanking our affiliates who are on the call. First of all, we couldn't be doing any of this without you guys. We love you guys. We appreciate you guys for bolting us onto your existing programming, uh, allowing us access to your community and hosting these phenomenal events. Secondly, I know we have, and we have, I think, 8 or 9 events nationwide this one weekend alone. So we're super excited about that. And that does include, I believe, 2 road shows, one all the way in Cali and then one all the way on the other opposite of the country in North Carolina. So super excited for that, guys. Thank you so much. A quick background in the beginning, there was DecaFit. 500 meters preceded by the same 10 functional fitness zones that you guys are producing this weekend at your facility. And then as fate would happen, as that was being rolled out in the midst of the pandemic, restrictions came about, plans had to change, we had to tweak some things. We noticed that gyms were closing their doors, unfortunately, because of the restrictions. So the creators of DECA pivoted to create the DECA Strong and DECA Mile events that you guys are producing. For those who don't know, DECA Strong is the same exact 10 zones, zero running, DECA Mile, same zones, but preceded with 160-meter run jog walk before that, way you have a total running time of a mile versus what the original iteration was when it was just the fit, the 500 meters, which would total a 5K running time. So we were able to pivot. It was a very hectic situation, but we were able to make that happen. And that's where the affiliate program really comes into play. So thank you so much. And if any of you hosting facilities, roadshow hosting facilities, want more information about the affiliate program, be more than happy to talk to you guys about that at a later date. Just let us know. Want to jump right in, as Robin said, to the movement standards. So there are 10 zones. They don't vary, they don't differ, but there are modifications, weight modifications, depending on whether it's male or female. And we do have a youth division as well, which there's some modifications for, and that includes tweaks on the reps, the calories, and the distances. Not the reps, my apologies, just on the calories, distance, and resistance when it comes to the tank. So I'm going to run us briefly through the 10 zones, just point out certain things for you guys to be mindful of. And the reason is specifically, number one, your athletes deserve 100% of our attention, right? Guiding them through the process. Some of them, it's their first time they're towing the start line ever in their life, maybe the very beginning of their fitness or weight loss journey. Others haven't towed the start line since high school or so. So we want to make sure that we give them the attention so we can coach them and guide them through, make sure that they're performing to the best of their ability, trying to meet the standard. And secondly, to preserve the integrity of the leaderboard. This year, we have our very first DECA World Championships. It's in November 19th and 20th in Atlantic City, New Jersey. So everything happening at your facility is extremely important because people can only qualify for the competitive heats and elites by participating in at an event in our affiliate's home or one of our roadshow stops. So very important. So to talk you through the zones, zone 1, alternating reverse lunges, a couple of things to look for here is we want to make sure that it's reverse. Once an athlete starts going with forward lunges, they get into that rhythm immediately, and it's tough to stop them, to start over, because those would be no reps. We need them to be reverse. Knee must make contact with the ground, and the athlete must have full knee and hip extension. As Yancey always says, we don't take a 2x4 and put it on their back and make sure that they're 100% extended or hyperextended. There's a tiny gray area that we will allow a slight bend, but you want to make sure that your athlete's not leaning forward, hinged at the hip, nor at the knees. We want them standing tall. And we want to count the rep at the top when the movement is completed. So we're going to make sure they make contact with the ground, but actually count the rep out loud when they stand tall. And that's 33-pound RAM for females, 55 pounds for males. And for those who have kiddos, doing the youth division this weekend, it's 22 pounds for those. On the second zone, it's a 500-meter row. For kids, it's half that distance. It's 250. And the athletes can adjust the damper settings as they like. They can adjust the foot settings. They can stop, take a break, not just in this zone, in any zone. They can stop and break, but we want to make sure that they stay at that zone, number 2, until the 500-meter row is complete. So when you have that last pull at 480 something, they can put the strap down, the pull strap down, and they can undo their foot setting, get their feet off. But we want to make sure they don't leave that zone until the monitor reads 500. Truth be told, I'm the only person on the planet that I know so far who was given that last pull at 480 something and undo my feet, got my feet on the ground, put the strap back, and it stops at 499 twice. I know a lot of people it happens to once, but it's happened to me twice, both at my own road shows. And then I got to grab the strap and kind of look awkward and funny trying to get that last meter into 500. Once they get off of that, they move to zone 3. Zone 3 is a 20 box jump or step over. And what we're looking for there is 2 feet to make contact on the top and then 2 feet on the other side. So they're going up and over, essentially. They can jump using 2 feet. The one thing we're not looking for is full hip extension. They can stay nice and low. There's a couple of techniques that are being used out there that are helping the athletes really save some time by staying low. And the one thing I do want to spend a couple of moments clarifying, and I believe this is on the current official rule book, which is linked in the emails you should have received at some time prior to this call. So I want to recommend that you take a look at that rule book. Incidental contact is allowed. What we mean by incidental contact is if your athlete is getting on the box and his hand grazes the box, if they need to touch the box to balance themselves. We do realize that a good amount of athletes, we've come to realize, some are afraid of heights, and although it's just 24 inches of box height, for some of us that may not be an issue. For others, it could be. Then you have people who are in the beginning of their weight loss journey. They're just not able to comfortably get up there. And then you have those who getting 24 inches off the ground, it becomes challenging. So for those athletes, they can most certainly use their knees to get on the box, maybe have some hand contact, then turn their body around and get off the box on the other side. We do recognize that they are not going to be breaking any records. And the main thing about DECA, which I probably should have mentioned earlier, is it was created as fitness assessment and a celebration of fitness for all levels of fitness, whether it's, like I said earlier, the beginning of a journey, their first time to start line of anything in their life. We wanted to make sure that the product was something that people can come off the streets and brand new into your facility and walk away with something that they can be proud of, a DECA mark, something that they can take home and that they can come back to your facility, hopefully, and improve upon. By the way, if you guys have any questions about these zones, just hold on to them till the end, and we'll just recap. Zone 4, it's 25 med ball sit-ups, and it is 20 pounds for men, 14 for women, and 10 for children. It is 25 reps. The most important thing here is the starting position is where with their back flat on the floor or on a mat, with the ball above the ground, above their head, with contact to the ground. And then when they curl up for their sit-up, all we need to see is the meat of the ball strike in between their heels. So some athletes are going to have to reach further to get the ball in between their feet. Other athletes are going to probably not be so upright on a full sit-up position. It is allowed for them to be slightly reclined as long as the meat of the ball makes contact with the ground between their heels. And it is 25 reps for those. And again, we want to make sure that we are counting when the rep is completed, which is when it makes contact with the ground in between the heels. Zone 5, just like zone 2, it's a 500-meter skier. So they're essentially going to just grab the straps and go. The athlete can adjust the damper settings at any time. They can pause and break. One thing I do want to mention that I didn't mention at the top is I try to make it so that none of the judges or volunteers touch any of the equipment. We want to make sure that there's no accidental advantage or disadvantage created. And sometimes you'd be surprised. We get some DMs online. Hey, a judge helped. They made an adjustment here. So I always remind our judges and remind our athletes that our judges are there to cheer them on, to celebrate them, to count out loud, and God forbid, but for their benefit, if only necessary, no rep. The occasional no rep, and sometimes a no rep is exactly what an athlete needs to help them fall in line with the standard, to help them progress further, and to help them complete what they started and make it onto the global leaderboard. So just be mindful of that. And one thing I do want to touch on that I should have mentioned earlier as we go into zone 6, which is the farmer's carry. Make sure, and say this a couple of times too, make sure that the athlete is in full control of all the weight at all times. So that means when they're back in zone 1 and they finish those alternating reverse lunges with the Spartan Rams, at least make the effort to put the weight back. These Rams are made out of 100% recycled tires, so they're like footballs. If they land on an angle, they're going to flip and roll and bobble and possibly hurt the athlete, the volunteer, or someone else in the lane next door. That goes for farmer's carry. It's dumbbells, 60 pounds for men, 40 pounds farmer's carry for women, 20 pounds for kids. It's a total of 100 meter. And as per the rule book, what you guys are doing for your Deca Strong and Deca Mile events is you're creating a 10 meter down and back. Most people mark it with red tape. You can use chalk, you can use cones, preferably something that's not going to move on you. And what we're looking is for the athlete to grab the dumbbells behind the start line of that zone to progress 10 meters down. Both feet must cross the line, and then come back to the starting line. Both feet must touch there as well. That's one. That's 20 meters total, 10 each way. And they need to do that for a total of 5 reps, 5 down and backs. I usually advise my judges, hey, when they finish their first down and back, have your finger up. Second down and back, have your second finger up. That way, at the start line, your staff can see how your athlete, the athletes ahead of them are progressing before they launch the next athlete. We want to make sure we prevent bottlenecks. And by knowing where the athletes are in zone 6, really helps with the launch sequence. Zone 7, everyone's favorite, as Yancey calls it, unlucky zone 7. It is the bike. And it's a 25-calorie effort on the bike. And once again, the athlete must stay seated on the bike until it reaches 25 calories. 2 quick points here. Your first athletes of the day have the best advantage because no one's on the equipment before them. So they can set their rower before they start. They can set the skier damper settings, and they can set their bike to the desired vertical and horizontal position. But what happens with the athletes after your first? Well, there's 2 things that, number one, the athletes should always be able to set up the rower because typically we don't launch the next athlete until the first athlete is in zone 5. But what happens when they get to zone 7? The athlete can make the adjustment on their own because, again, our judges are not allowed to make any adjustments to any of the equipment for the athlete. So the athlete, if they're not concerned with time, they just want to get through and see where they land today, they can make that adjustment on their own. Another thing that is allowed is for the athlete to have a friend of theirs, a gym member, buddy of theirs, adjust the seat height for them, but only when they're at zone 6 and they let the judge know, hey, I'm making the adjustment to this bike for that athlete. So the judge knows, everyone's aware that person won't be getting kicked off the course. And we want to make sure that the athlete ahead has already completed the bike before we make any adjustments to it. So in that fashion, your athlete won't be as impacted by time if he has a member make the adjustment for them. So that's totally acceptable. And again, 25 calories, they can stay on it as it kind of cycles through the last couple of bits of calories until it reaches 25, and then they can move on to zone 8. And for Deca Strong and Deca Mile, it is shoulder over. 60 pounds for males, 40 pounds for females, 20 pounds for kids. Essentially, all we're looking for here is the dead ball to be picked up, full knee and hip extension, and for the ball to go over the shoulder. They can alternate shoulders. They can throw it or they can roll it off. I typically tell my athletes when I'm guiding them through, and the judges when I'm at a road show, we need to make sure, per the rule book, we need to make sure that the ball goes over the traps, over the shoulders, and not rolling off of the side. So I typically tell my athletes, hey, get it up to your shoulder and just raise your arm just for a couple of inches. It'll completely guide the ball over. So they'll never have to be concerned with no reps because of that. Do want to make sure that your athletes are standing tall, full knee and hip extension, and that they're not trying to game the system or cheat by becoming small or tipping to the side and possibly injuring their core. Zone 9, torque tank. Love this particular piece of machinery, because we always say DECA is fitness for all levels. And with the traditional sled, push, pull, amazing device. But if your athlete can't push or pull the couple of 100 pounds on there, essentially their event's over. So with DECA, we're using a torque tank. It's built off of magnetic resistance level. There's four levels: neutral, then you have level 1 for kids, level 2 for women, and level 3 for men. And the magnetic resistance recruits and becomes more difficult the harder you push. So anyone beginning their fitness journey with one hand on a tank but walking extremely slow can actually push that tank down the 10 meters and back 5 times to complete that 100 meters. Of course, your athlete is going to want to go hard. They're fighting for time. They're either going to sacrifice energy or sacrifice time. They're going to sacrifice energy. They're going to go hard. It's going to become a pretty good challenge for them to push the tank down and back. Push down, pull back. All you and the athletes should be focused on is, number one, making sure that the level of resistance is correct on both axles. In other words, for men, all the way up both axles, and then for women, all the way up -1. The reason why I say it like that is because if you go by the markings on the side, the label on the side of the tank, it actually looks like level 2 is level 3. So to prevent any miscommunication, misunderstanding, or creating an unfair advantage or disadvantage for an athlete, simply just make sure you pop both levers up on both axles for men, and then all the way up -1 for women. If you're doing kids, all the way down 1 up to get to level 1, resistance level 1 for them. As far as your athletes, just make sure that they're focusing on the 4 silver bolts right in front of them. We want to make sure those 4 bolts start at the tape, your starting line at the tape, and that the entire tank moves beyond the 10-meter line that they're going to be walking towards. We want to make sure those same 4 bolts pass the entire tape marking. That way the entire tank has traveled to 10 full meters. And they can use their hands on the handles. They could use their shoulders. They can hold low on the crossbar. On the return, it is a pull, and the athlete must walk backwards. The way DECA was designed is to have a particular and specific compounding effect as you go from zone to zone. So we want to make sure that the athlete doesn't grab and try to turn around or use different muscle groups. They must use the straps. They must walk backwards. And yes, they can pull and get their lats engaged to get a little breather for their legs. It's not going to be much of a breather. They're still going to be working, but they can pull, walk back, sit and pull, and go through that motion to progress down to complete the first down and back. And again, just like with farmers carries, I advise you to recommend to your judges that they put their fingers up so you know exactly where your athlete is, where their athlete is, so you understand how to better launch or to manage the launch of the next athletes. And then the last zone is everyone's favorite, Spartan Ram burpees. 44 pounds for men, 22 for women, and a little bitty 11-pounder for kids. The only things we're looking for there is a starting position is at the bottom with chest making contact, chest or upper abdominal area making contact to with the ram, feet extended out. And yes, they can walk on their knees to get their feet out and back in. That's all accepted. On the up movements of the position, we just need knee and hip extension and that ram to clear the top of the head so that we see daylight between the top of the head, bottom of the ram. This looks a lot better on pictures. This meets the standard. And make sure you're counting out loud. And once that 20th ram burpee clears the top of the head, time stops. You write down the finish time on the scorecard, which Robin's going to go over in a couple of minutes, and give that back to the athletes, celebrate them, congratulate them. They'll take that back to the to the check-in area to retrieve their finisher's collateral. And just a quick last point here. We celebrate everybody. That's what DECA is. It's a huge celebration. We're honored we get to do it in your facility. What that means is that if someone does not meet the standard, we want to give them every opportunity. So it might take somebody 35 reps of alternating reverse lunges to get 30 good ones that, for them to meet the standard. We give them all that opportunity, but somebody might be showing up to your event with a knee injury or for some reason unable to make that contact, and they're aware of it, and they'll let you know. The only difference is we can't put their score on the leaderboard because, as I mentioned at the top, the leaderboard has world championship implications, so we need to preserve that integrity. But we most certainly want them to walk away with that finish time on that paper so that they have something to work towards and to come back to your facility if they're new to your facility, so you can help build them up in those areas. In that scorecard, the only thing that goes on the scoreboard is when the judges put the DECA mark in the upper right corner. I'll leave that up for Robin to discuss in a couple of moments. But real quick, does anyone have any questions about